Okay, let's begin. So the aim of this tutorial is basically to give you an overview of Notion, particularly from a personal point of view for me. I found it to be a really useful tool, one that's been the solution to a lot of problems for me, and I hope to kind of share that with you how and why it's been able to do that. I wish I could share my kind of personal workspace with you and show you what that looks like, but it's far too intertwined with my personal life. Yassine, that's fine. Your English is perfect. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to start from scratch, which should hopefully be good for those of you who haven't used Notion before or have only kind of used it in passing, or have used it in some of the ways which we're going to talk about, which are not less useful, but take less advantage of its full power. So, and I think the main thing that I'd like you to get out of this session is an idea of what Notion is. We're going to go through a few different kind of conceptions of what Notion is as we kind of build up the functionality and build up in our kind of skill level as we progress through this. And hopefully by the end, you've built up a better idea of what Notion is than the ones that are easily kind of explainable, that are easily available, because it's a very versatile tool, and a description of it doesn't really do justice to what it can do for you. But we'll come on to that. Let's get started. So if I just show you very quickly how to get set up if you've never used Notion before. You go to notion.so and you get a window like this, okay? And you can just say here, try Notion free. That's a bit misleading. Notion is free. We can talk a little bit about what you can pay for and what that gives you. But if you click here, try Notion free, it'll let you kind of sign in with a Google or Apple account or set up a dedicated Notion account. Any of those work. And it's a very quick process. And once you've done that, this is where you arrive. You arrive at this getting started page. And it's got, some instructions. It's got some tutorials, which I haven't watched, to be honest. But this is what you get, right? So let's go through a little bit of the layout of what you have here. What you have here is a page. And if you kind of read a description of Notion or you talk to someone about it, they'll tell you it's a wiki, right? So a wiki is a website that you go to that has a bunch of pages. You can add your own pages, you can edit pages, and other people can do that too, right? So you can invite people into your Notion workspace and you can edit documents together. Well, not quite documents, but essentially web pages. So they have some example, wiki stuff here for you. And that's all quite useful. We're going to ignore all of it and we're going to start from scratch. There's nothing to really repeat. We haven't really got started, so I'll just continue from here, and if you have anything you want me to kind of cover in more detail, then just let me know, and I'm happy to do that. So the first thing we kind of said is Notion is a wiki, right? Let's treat it a little bit like a wiki, and let's make a new page. Okay, so you can just go onto the sidebar here, and you can say add a page. And you see you have a blank page and you have some kind of templates that you can choose from. And we're going to ignore this database bit for now, although we will deal with it quite a bit later. The other thing to note is also, I'm using Notion in a web browser. There's a desktop app available, which is essentially the same as the web version. And there are mobile apps. And we'll go through kind of how, the kind of limitations of the mobile apps, but generally it's a very good mobile application. But you'd use it more for kind of, editing pages you've already made than really creating things from scratch. And when you do create things from scratch on mobile, you'll often find yourself coming back to them on computer just to kind of flesh them out a bit more. I like to use web browser purely for the reason that you can have multiple Notion tabs open. But if focus is a problem for you, as it is for a lot of us, then being able to just click the desktop app and not have the rest of the internet in front of you is also going to be useful. So we've created a new page. Okay, we went here, we created a new page, and there's a few things to note straight away about pages. All pages have a title. Okay, so I'm just going to call this tutorial. and I'm going to say I want an empty page. Okay, you can add an icon here, so you can add, I don't know, let's choose that. Okay, you can choose an emoji, or you can add pictures, upload pictures, and the icon then appears in the sidebar as well for the page. So if you kind of have Notion open as well while we're going through this, you can try out some of the things I'm saying, or you can take notes. There's a couple of things I want to say about a blank page, first of all, which is pages have a few kind of attributes in common. They all have a title. You can have multiple pages with the same title. Notion can deal with that. They all have a URL. So if you're in the web browser, you'll see this here. You can copy and paste this, and as long as you're signed into your account, it will always take you to the same page. Even though this URL contains the title of the page, as soon as I change the title here, and the URL updates, the old URL will still be valid. It will just redirect you to wherever the page has ended up, which is quite useful. Pages also have something called properties. And we'll come to properties later. Right now, this page has no properties and there's no way to add any, but that becomes really important later. Let's start off, the final thing is on the top right here, you have click this menu and you get some options to do with the page. You can share it, like I said earlier, with other people, invite them to contribute or just to read it. You can kind of make the page full width, which is very useful later on when we get into tables and things like that. Small text doesn't do much, doesn't make the text much smaller. And you can change, some basic aspects of formatting. In terms of what you put on the page, if I just type here, okay, I can just type normal text. And this is where we get into our first kind of concept after pages, which is blocks. See, as soon as I mouse over a line, I get these three dots, or a pair of three dots each on the side here. And it tells you exactly what you can do here. You can click and drag to move these around and rearrange them. You don't have to move them onto the same page. So I could move this onto another page. And if I go to that page, okay, bad example, because that was the database. Let me find, yeah, this page. Okay, so I can drag this. I can drag this onto here. Yes, there are fonts. You can choose and change your font here, but you don't get much choice. It's quite limited. That limitation is a benefit, and we'll come to that as well. So you can see I just dragged this block onto this page here from the page it was on. If you click this, left click on the three dots, you get a few options. Okay. For now, I'm just going to say delete, and we'll come back to some of the other options a bit later. Just make sure that I've got a rough kind of guideline of where we're going, and then we'll get a bit more freeform later. So you've got normal text, which you can just type in. And then you have a bunch of options that you can turn this into. So again, if you click this block icon, you can say turn into, and you get all these options, bullet points, headings, to-do lists, that kind of thing. One thing you'll find quite useful is shortcuts for these. So if you begin a line with a dash and then type space, it turns it into a bullet point. You hit enter, you've got another bullet point. If you want to indent, so if you want multiple levels of bullet point, you just hit tab, right? And now I'm typing here, and I can do shift tab to go back a level. And it's quite intelligent in the way it manages these blocks as well. So if I drag this block, okay, it's just going to drag that one bullet point. But if I drag this one, it's going to drag that one and all of the ones that are under it, i.e. indented below it. And you can click drag as well. So you can click drag a rectangle, and you can select multiple blocks, and you can move them about. So that's bullet points. You do that with the dash. Another useful one is square brackets. So you do open square bracket, close square bracket, and now suddenly I've got a to-do list, and I can check items off it. Another one is if you've got a lot of content that you want to kind of hide away and allow to expand up again, you can do a greater than sign, and you have what's called a toggle list. Okay, so I can add a title to it here, and then I can put whatever blocks I want inside it. So I can put some text, I can put a bullet list, I can put a checklist, all of these kind of things I can put inside, and I can just click this arrow to collapse it down and expand it back out again. And the final one that I think is useful right now is headings. So you have 3 levels of heading, and you begin them with a hash. So that's heading 1, that's the biggest. Do 2 hashes for heading 2, and 3 for heading 3. Another useful thing you can do is all of these shortcuts I've shown you, so the dash and the greater than sign and all of these things, they don't just apply to new lines. So if I've created a big title, yeah, I'll try and slow down a little bit. If I've created a heading 1 and I want that to have less prominence on the page, I can just put in the new icon and hit space, and it redoes it. Same thing, if I want to change a checklist item into a bullet list item, I can just do it like that. So it's quite kind of dynamic, the way that you can do these things. When you have normal text, so when I'm typing a paragraph like this, I can do bold text and italic text quite easily. So to do italics, I can do 2 asterisks, and as soon as I do, to do bold, I do 2 asterisks, and to do, okay, I've got this the wrong way around, but let me fix that quickly. Okay, so single asterisk for italic, 2 asterisks for bold. And that's most of the formatting. You can see here there are some other options in terms of turn into. You can do code and things like that. And some of the more advanced ones we might come to a little bit later. If there are any issues or if anything's not clear, just let me know in the chat. I know there is a small delay, so I'll try and slow down a little bit to give the tutorial some time to sync up, and so I can get your chat messages in time. Okay, so everything I've described so far in terms of formatting on the page, and this is a bit of a kind of technical note, is something called Markdown. So all of this stuff which I described, all of those shortcuts are part of essentially a language, a very simple language called Markdown, which is designed to give you the ability when you're writing normal text to kind of present it in a way that's somewhat a little bit more readable. So if I create a code block here, if I remember how to do this on my keyboard, a Markdown document will look like this. It will have, that's considered a heading, and this is a second level heading, and this is normal text, and this is a bullet list. Okay, and so all Notion's doing when you're typing these things out is as soon as you hit spacebar, it's saying, okay, have you just typed something that can be interpreted as Markdown, and it therefore turns this into this. The place that kind of falls apart, actually, before I do that, the final one that I want to talk about is a separator. So if you want, kind of a new section of your document, you do 3 dashes, and you get this separator line, okay, that you can kind of move about. The place where this begins to fall apart and the place where this gets complex is tables. So if I want to do a table in Markdown, I simply do heading, and then a bar and a pipe, and another heading, and another one. And then I basically just make it look like a table, right? So I do this. And then I have my content inside, right? And even if things don't line up exactly, Markdown is clever enough to know that that's what a table looks like. A table in Notion is quite a different thing. And this is where we get a little bit complex, but bear with me and let me know if anything's unclear, because this is what we're going to build the rest of what we do on. So when you create a table in Notion, it's something quite different to that. when you create a table, you're actually creating a database. So it says here, when you've got a blank line and you haven't typed anything, it says type slash for command. So if I type slash, you get a list of all the things that you can add into your page. And there's an option here, table inline, right? You can actually filter this list, so I can type slash table, and at the top, I get the option for creating an inline table. Let's check on the health of the stream for a second. Yeah, we're good. Okay. So I'm going to say table inline. Now you can see this table also has a few properties. Just like a page has a title, this table has a title. Okay, so we're going to create a to-do list. Okay. Okay, and you might ask, why am I creating a to-do list in a table as opposed to like this, just a simple to-do list with a checklist? And we'll kind of hopefully throughout this session flesh out why you might want to do that. So you create a blank table and it already has some headings, whereas in Markdown we have to write our own headings. We have some examples here, right? We don't have to keep them, but we have some examples here. So we have tags, which isn't that useful to us right now. So we can go here to property type and we can change the type of this column to whatever we want. Okay. So tags is currently a multi-select property type. What that means is I can add an item in here, I can select it, and I can add another one, and I can select it. And so those items that I created here are now accessible in every row in the table, right? If I want to create another one, I can just add a new one, and it appears there. If I want to delete an option, I can go to these three dots here, and I can just hit delete and confirm it, and you see it's disappeared from everywhere that it was referenced. Like I said, we don't want tags, okay? We want a to-do list. So let's change this into a checkbox here, okay? So in fact, let's not do a to-do list. Let's do a shopping list to start with. Okay, so let's say I want some eggs, I want some chicken, and I want some bananas. Okay, so I'm in the shop, I've opened this page on my Notion mobile app, and I can just tick things off as I get them. That's pretty simple. What if I want to change this name column? I can't actually change the property type here. Okay, it's set to title, and there's nothing I can do about that. I can right-click it, I can left-click it. You know, there's nothing I can do about that. I can rename it, so I could call it item, I guess. But I can't get rid of that title. Why is that? I'll wait 30 seconds or a minute and see if there's any guesses or if anyone knows why I can't remove or why I might not be able to remove the title column. Give it literally 1 minute. So at 10 seconds past 51, I'll give the answer if no one said it. Okay, so at the beginning, when we kind of first created a page, we kind of described what a page has, right? And I said it has properties and it has a title. So what we've actually done in here is we've created pages. Each item in this table is a page. It may not have any content yet, but each of these is a page. And this is kind of when we get into understanding what Notion is. It's not just a wiki, it's a database. When you create a table, you're not just creating a table which is a way to represent something visually, represent some text visually on a page. You're actually creating a view onto a set of data, and you can link that data across your Notion workspace, and that's where the real power comes in. So a table is just one way of visualizing data in Notion. So you'll see when I mouse over any of these items in the title column, or the column with the title type, it comes up with an open button. And as soon as I click open, I have a new page. When I said that pages have properties, you can see that that tags field, which I didn't rename, so I should just say collected or something. Those columns in the table have appeared as properties on the page. And now I can add whatever I want here. I can just type whatever I want. I should probably type something that makes sense, but keyboard mashing will do for now. You see, as soon as I've done that now, there's this little page icon that's appeared next to it. If I open it again, and if I add an icon, that's a bit of a lame icon. You see that now that's been replaced with the icon. I'm just clicking out, by the way, to get out of the page. And another thing I said that all pages have is URLs. So I get this button here that says open as page. And if I open that in a new tab, but if I just did it here, it would open in the same tab, obviously. I'm on that page. It's got a URL. It's conceptually no different from this page. The only difference is it's now stored inside a database. It's not stored in the kind of sidebar, and it doesn't appear on the sidebar, but it's still a page. That's the kind of key concept, one of the key concepts, which is going to enable a lot of the things that we do with Notion. So I want to kind of digress for a little bit, just for the sake of those of you who have a computer science background or who've dealt with relational databases before. I just want to cover a little bit of theory, because the terminology that Notion uses when we get to this stage is a bit confusing if you have a computer science background. So if you don't have a computer science background, you can just ignore the next kind of 30 to 90 seconds of what I say. But if you do, hopefully it will clear up some confusion that you might have. When you create a database in Notion, so if I type /data, I get all of these options, okay? And these here, under the database heading here, these are all types of quote unquote database that Notion allows you to create. In technical terms, these are not databases, okay? These are tables. Your Notion workspace has one relational database. And whenever you create a new database in Notion, you're creating a table in that database. You can create relations between tables, and you can create relations within the same table. Okay, but you're essentially creating tables when it says database. When you create a table under the database type, you're just creating, a tabular view, like a spreadsheet view, a traditional view of that database table. Okay, columns are called properties, right? So wherever you see the word property, if you know what a relational database is, think of it as a column, and that will help you when you kind of build relations later. And rows, like we said, rows are kind of roughly analogous to pages. Okay, so each row has a page linked to it, and that page optionally has some content. So, okay, that's the computer science bit over. And as we go forward, I'm going to strictly use the Notion terminology. Okay, so even though it's not technically 100% accurate, we're going to stick to using the terminology that Notion uses just to stay consistent. Okay, so we've created this shopping list, and that's fairly useful. That's not going to be life-changing, right? That's not going to do too much for you other than allow you to buy eggs and chicken and bananas and make a very weird meal. But what if we want to do something more? Okay, what if we want to build, let's say, a list of tasks? Okay, so I can quite easily change this to task. And from collected, I can say done. And then I can say Notion tutorial. This is what we're doing right now. Okay, so it's not done yet. None of these are done yet. And then have a doctor's appointment, let's say. And then I'm going to have a job interview. Okay, so these are loosely tasks or events, and I'll come into the kind of way you want to organize things and you know, the different kind of typologies of data that you want to record in Notion and some patterns for dealing with that, because it does kind of push you into a certain way of doing things and a certain model, and it helps to understand how to best approach that. Okay, so this is quite useful. Okay, so I have some things to do and I can say I've done them, but I have no concept of when or how long they're going to take or anything like that. So it's, you know, it's kind of useful. It's not that useful. So let's add another column. I can just click here to add a new column, and you'll see it comes up with a title that I can change. So I'm going to change this to date. Okay. So if I go into property types here, you can see there are a number of property types, okay, that I can choose from, and there's one called date, which is very convenient. Okay, so I have a Notion tutorial, and it's right now. It's today, and by default this is just the date. Okay, I can say include time, and now I can say, okay, this Notion tutorial is at 11:30 a.m. I'll just note again, I kind of said before the stream started that chat is being recorded, so when the kind of video goes up, the chat will be alongside it as well. So I'm sure that will provide plenty of entertainment for those watching. So, okay, I've added a date. That's a bit more useful, right? So I have a list of tasks. I can tick them off when I've done them. I know when they are going to be or when they were. Let's get like quite a bit more advanced. Okay, so the most advanced kind of column type you can have is a formula, and it's somewhat similar to formulas in Excel. Okay, and I wouldn't necessarily say that formulas are something you learn at the beginning of your journey with Notion, but it's going to be quite useful to us here to write a simple formula, because when you have a task, it's not usually kind of done or not, right? There's an in progress status. There are some other states that a task can be in. We kind of want to infer this done status. We don't want it to be kind of something that we deal with manually, but I want to be able to say that, okay, I have a task that's upcoming or to do, then I have one that's in progress, and then I transition it to done, right? And I still want to know, like, yes or no, is it done? But what if I could combine that with the status? Okay, so let's add a status column. I'm going to change the type of this one to select. Okay, so this is similar to the multi-select we had before, but you can only have one item selected at a time. So I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have in progress, and you can see as soon as I select in progress, it changes, right? I can't select more than one of these at the same time. And I'm going to have done. Okay, and it's quite nice it made done green automatically. You can change the color here if you want to. So this Notion tutorial is in progress, but as soon as it's done, I want to change it to done, and I want this done column to become ticked automatically. How do I go about achieving that? I don't need a new column for this actually. Let's just change. So you just right click on a column, you get all these options, and I'm going to say delete here. So I'm going to delete this. I want to change this done column to automatically update based on the status that I choose here. So I'm going to change this to a formula. And again, I'm going to go technical for a bit for those with a computer science background, which I don't have, by the way. So if I do get anything technically wrong, just shout out and let me know. But I'm going to change this done column to Right, I'm going to change this done column to automatically update. And so the technical bit is formulas in Notion are essentially functional programming. You get functions and you can compose them, and that's basically it, right? And we have an example here of some code that we can type in, which is almost exactly what we want to do. Okay, so it's saying take this property, so we have the property function, and then in these quotes we have some text, which is the name of the property to look up. Okay, so this will return the value of a property called task, and equals, so is equal to this string, Notion tutorial. That's almost what we want to do, right? So I'm just going to copy and paste that into here, but it's not the task that I want to look at, it's the status. So change that to status. And it's not the word Notion tutorial we want to look for, it's done. So as soon as I do that, I click done here. Bit confusing, these two have nothing to do with each other. This just means we're finished editing the formula. I hit done, you can see automatically, because this is done, it's ticked. If I remove that done option, or I change it to any of the others, it isn't ticked. As soon as I say done, that's ticked. Now these tick boxes are not something I can change manually anymore, because this is now a formula field. Okay, so the only thing I can do when I click in here is edit the formula itself. But that's getting quite useful, right? So now we have a to-do list. I can say it's in progress, and as soon as it's done, it ticks here as done, right? That's quite useful, but people generally don't tend to organize their to-do lists like this, right? It's a bit boring, and you might want to see it on a calendar. You might want to see it on a timeline. This is where the real power kind of comes about of Notion. So one thing we're going to do, just very quickly, I'm going to come back to this. If I type /database on a page, you can see I have a bunch of options and they all end in the word inline. And then we have full page, right? So these are all the same things repeated. You see table full page, table inline. What's the difference between them? Well, the difference is that an inline table is contained on a page, okay? And a full page table or database or timeline or calendar, etc., is a page of its own. So it will appear here on the sidebar as a thing of its own. So what I'm going to do for this shopping list is I'm going to move it into being a page of its own, and then we can do some other things with it, right? So I'm going to say, how do I do that? Move to, okay, that's not going to work. Turn into page. Okay, so it's not there, it's over here. Okay, these three dots that pop up when you're over the table, you click them, you can say turn into page. Okay, so this turns it from an inline database or table into a page of its own. Now you can see it still doesn't appear here, right? Why does it not appear? Well, because even though it's a page of its own, it's still a sub-page of this page. So if I expand the tutorial page, you can see it's here, okay? We want to actually make it a top-level page. So there's two ways I can do that. I can drag this block over here like that, and if I let go right now, that will be its own top-level page above tutorial. Or I can do it from here. I can do exactly the same thing. I can drag this out, and you can see it's its own page here, okay? Put a picture of a receipt. That's our shopping list, okay? Let me also add a new page, okay? And this is what we're going to use now to kind of transform this shopping list into something else, because it hasn't been a shopping list for a few minutes, right? It's been a task list. So let's call it tasks. Now on my new page, on my Untitled page, I'm going to create a page called tasks as well. Okay, so like I said, pages can have the same content, the same titles, and Notion knows how to deal with that. Doesn't have an issue. So actually, let's rename this. Let's call this the tasks database. Okay, so this is where you can manage the data in a tabular way. And whenever you create a database of any type, and we'll get onto the types in a second, I'd recommend you always kind of keep one copy of it, or keep the master copy of it in a table form. because it's just easier to kind of click once and add properties than it is to do it another way and change formulas and things like that. It's a bit easier from this view, and you can just kind of hide this page away as a subpage of something else, so you don't have to look at it all the time. It's useful to have this there. Let's go into our task page. It's an empty page. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to type slash and type the word link. Okay, so I get a few options here. I get link to page, which is useful. I can link to an existing page. Actually, while that's open, you can also link to pages by typing at. So if I type at on a page, you can see it gives me some options of pages to link to, and I can also just type the name of a page. Okay, so if I type tutorial, it will link to my page that I created earlier. If I click it, I'm there. Okay, I can go back, get away from it. You can also, using add times. So it gives you some kind of suggested time. So I can say today, and that today is actually quite intelligent, right? Because it just looks like the word today. That's because it is today. What it's actually done is it's recorded a point in time. It's recorded today. And if I look at this page tomorrow, if I come back and open it tomorrow, it will say yesterday. If I look at it in a few days' time, it will say the exact date. A very similar thing is now. So if I type at now, okay, let's do that again, at now. It does the same thing, but with a time. Okay, so an exact time. And again, if I look at that at another time, it will kind of expand it out and make it look like, you know, the full date or whatever. And if I click on it, I can choose an alternate date. Okay, so I want to mention September 27th, and then it's kind of mentioned that for me. So that's quite a useful thing, the at symbol. And a really nice thing actually is that you can do this in a title as well. Okay, so I could say this is tasks for the tutorial. Okay, and now suddenly you can see here it just says at tutorial, which can be quite useful in some views, and we might get onto that near the end. But also I can, from the title itself, I can click it and I can get to that tutorial. Okay, back to what we were on to. You can just hit backspace, by the way. Once you've got some blocks selected, you can hit backspace or delete to delete them. And as soon as you end up with an empty page again, it gives you this, gives you these options to choose from. Again, we could just go to click empty, or if you click anywhere else, it will just create an empty page for you. So we were here, /link. So I can link to a page, which is what we just went through, or I can create a linked database. This is another key to the power of Notion, right? So if I click create linked database, we now have a list of all the databases that exist, and you'll see that some of the pages that Notion put there for us are actually reappearing in this list. So they weren't actually pages, they were databases, right? I am going to take the task database, and you can see it's reappeared here. Okay, so what we have here now, you can see this little arrow is the thing that differentiates it. But what we have here is a carbon copy of this. And what I'm going to do, because we want to get quite a lot of information on this page and we've already got this ugly scroll bar appearing, so I'm just going to make this page full width. Okay, so click the three dots here and say full width. You can see what I said about small text not doing anything, because it doesn't change anything that's inside a table, right? And it doesn't have that big of an effect anyway. So it's not that helpful in terms of getting more on a page. I generally don't use that, but full width is very useful, and I use that quite a lot. So this task database right now is, like I said, a carbon copy of what's here, not there, what's here. It's not really a copy, right? It's a view onto the same data. So if I add an item here, you'll see if I go back here, it's been added there. But there's something a bit different, right? The ordering's different. So I have a certain order of items here, and I have a different order of items here. And that's because the order is not something that's been set. So I can go here, and I can say sort. And just like in Excel or anywhere else, even in your file browser on your computer, you can decide what you want to sort things by. So I can say by date, ascending, and then I'll get the oldest things at the top, and I'll get newer things going down. These don't have a date, so they'll just be in some kind of random order. Okay, but if I go back here, you see that sorts had no effect, right? So what's going on, right? I said we have a view onto the same data, but the format, the sort hasn't updated. There are things we can do here that won't reflect over here. Why is that? It's because we're not changing any of the data. Any data that we change, i.e. any pages, any properties, that will propagate through, not even propagate through, right? That will be something that we're doing on the data itself, right? On the data that backs this table, which is the same data that backs this table. But anything we do in terms of visualizing that data, anything we do in terms of having a view on that data, when we update it just for this view, or for this, what Notion calls linked database. Where is listen to Sami Yusuf on the list? Let's add it, okay? And we've done that, right? So I can't click done again. I'll just say done here. Okay. When is this tutorial scheduled to finish? I mean, on a serious note, I've scheduled about, wow, this has been going on for quite a while. So I'm happy to go for another 45 minutes. But if you need to drop off, there will be a recording. Because, I have a kind of rough plan of where I'd like to get to, and we're a little way off that. Okay, let's try and make it a bit more interesting, right? So I have this task database, and we were talking about how how this is a view onto some data. Let's make it a more interesting and a more useful view. Let's add a view here, okay? And now I have some options, right? I can create a board, I can create a timeline, create a calendar, etc. Let's do calendar, because that's probably going to scratch an itch for some people, right? It's not actually that useful a view, but let's just make it so you can see what it's like. You see, I've created a calendar, and because one of the items had a date, because this Notion tutorial had a date, it's appeared on the same list, right? This is Batul wants a shout out. Okay, tell you what, let me add a task for tomorrow. Give Batul shout out. There you go. That will be recorded in the annals of time. Please make sarcastic jokes in between. I've got a lot to get through, right? If I'm able to make sarcastic jokes, then I will try to do so. But we're quite a way off where I want to be. So this is a bit more useful, right? Now we have a calendar, and we can organize our data this way. The reason the calendar is not that helpful is because it's only a month view, right? You can't view it in any other way than month by month. Okay. If you kind of click away too far from the month, you can just hit today, and it will take you to something that shows today. What's more useful than that? Well, what's often more useful is a timeline view. So if we add a timeline view, okay, it's a similar date-based view, but now we get an idea of duration, because let's say I want to give Batul a shout out all week, right? I can click and drag the edge of this. And now, if I go back to the table, you'll see that something's happened. You see that the date here isn't just a static date, but it's got a beginning and it's got an end, right? So what I did on the timeline affected what happened here. And so I have a beginning date, I have an end date. Please calendar 19th November, my birthday. Okay, we'll get to your birthday. We'll add that. Remind me later if I don't get to it. So you can see now how the ability to kind of organize your data in this way might become useful. Okay, let me just check so I've got a to-do list off the side for this tutorial. I'm just kind of seeing where we are. Cool. Okay, let's talk a little bit about relations. Let's talk about organizing your data. Hopefully, I've given you enough context on the data model of Notion, right? By data model, I mean the fact that you can create these things called databases, and they have different types, which are essentially different views. So calendars, timelines, boards, which are useful for to do in terms of actually let's add a board, okay? Let's say I want it on the same page, right? So I don't want to just change this timeline view, and I also want to tidy this up, right? I don't need all of these views on one table, so I'm going to delete the ones I don't need. So just click the three dots, click delete. And I'm going to link another database here, okay? Or link the same database again. So create link database. I'm going to select the same task database, and I'm going to add a board view. Okay, I'm going to delete the table view. You can see now it's automatically selected the status, right? It's looked at the database. It said, okay, there's a column with a select type, and a select type is what I need to create a board on which I can move tasks about, right? So again, same data, I can drag this to to-do. I haven't listened to Sami Yusuf yet, right? And actually, I want to know, just looking at this timeline, I want to see whether something's been done or not, right? So why don't we do that? First of all, let's give this a date. So there are a number of ways I can give it a date, right? I can go back here and I can find the item and I can use the date picker there. I can open the page directly, so I can just click an item on the board and I can add a date here. Or I can just click where I want it to be, okay, and drag it about. So I should do this today. I'm going to click there and it's suddenly given it a date. You can see here, but it's given it a time period. And I just want it to happen today. So I've got other things to listen to, right? So I'm just going to drag this smaller. You can see the dates updated automatically. But I want to show the done status, right? I want to see on here whether something's been done or not. That's very easy to do. We just go here and we go to properties and we can choose what we display. So we've got a table on the left here. I can say I want to show it there, but I don't really want to show it there. I want to show it in the timeline. Okay, so I'm going to click it here. Done. Okay, so I don't want to show the full status. I just want to know whether it's been done or not. And do you know what? I want this before the title. Okay, the first thing I want to see is the status. So I'm just going to drag that up. You can see it's moved it over here. Okay, and this has been done. Giving Batul a shout out. So I drag it across to done. I get the tick here, and I get the tick here. Right, and in every view, you have this properties option, right? And it describes what you can see in that view. So here, I don't need the tick box, right? I don't need the done status because I know it's in the done column, right? So I can just turn that off here, right? So hopefully that's getting a bit more useful. And we're kind of getting to an hour. I'm gonna end at past, hopefully, unless there's I'll tell you what, at past, I'll kind of open the floor for questions, serious or serious-ish questions, and maybe we can see where that goes if anyone has anything specific they want to achieve. But there's one or two more things that I want to discuss, and that is the kind of, I realize I've rushed through this quite quickly, and maybe we can kind of review or recap another time. And go through it a bit more slowly, because I feel I haven't quite shown enough of the kind of the way that Notion helps, and maybe we talk about that at the end. The way it helps you kind of get organized, right? But one thing I do want to talk about is the kind of data model. Okay, so we've been kind of dealing with this tasks database, right, until now, and there's a kind of pattern that Notion forces you into. Which is frustrating at first, right? Because it's a lack of flexibility. but it actually turns out to be quite useful in the end. And that is that Notion forces you to have fewer databases than you would think that you want, right? So a tasks database is something that most people will have in common, and then they might want an events calendar. They might consider that a separate thing, right? They might want something to track their university lectures or conferences they have to attend and things like that. They might want something to track their reading and notes on books that they've read. What Notion kind of pushes you towards is putting all of that stuff in one database. In my Notion, I have a global database. And anything that has kind of time-based data goes into that database, right? And I have links. We'll come on to links if we get time. Links as in relations. I have that database linked out through relations to other databases. But the reason that you want to kind of keep all of that data in one database, it comes back to this. It comes back to the way that you visualize it, right? If you have a calendar and you have a separate database for your events and you have a separate database for your tasks, you can't view those on the same calendar. And it's much, much easier in Notion to separate one database out if you later feel that you need to into separate databases than it is to merge databases, right? If you have two separate databases and you want to consolidate them into one so that you can view them on the same calendar or so that you can deal with them in a certain way, it is possible, but there are some caveats and it's a little bit harder. So what I would recommend, start off putting everything in one database. And then when you feel you need to split it out, again, there's a pattern for that. So let's do this, okay? So I'm going to stop calling this the task database and I'm going to call this the global database, okay? And you'll probably find a picture of a globe. There we go. Choose Europe, okay. So I'm going to have tasks in here and I'm going to have events, okay? So you can see here, this doctor's appointment actually is an event. I don't need to add anything new, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new type of, I'm going to add a new property, sorry. I'm going to call it, going to choose a select type again, because I only want each item here or each page to have one type. I'm going to call this type, okay? So this for me is a task. For you guys, it's an event, hopefully. But for me, this is a task, right? This, on the other hand, is an appointment. It'd help if I spelled it correctly. And let's say the job interview is an event. Okay, item's not a thing. Give the tool shout out is a task. Listen to Sami Yusuf is a task. Okay, so I have all of this data in this database, and you can imagine it gets to be a bit of a mess. What I'd suggest, again, leave this global database how it is, okay? You can add views and you can filter and you can sort it, but when you do things like that, it's always going to be a temporary thing. This is not the primary way you're interacting with the data. And you're going to come to this global database view just when you need to view the raw data, to edit it in bulk, and to do things like that. What you can actually do then is say, okay, this calendar, I want this calendar just to show events. I don't want it to show tasks. So what we can do here is we can say filter and add a filter. And all I have to do is change status is, sorry, not status, type is task. As soon as I do that, I only get tasks, right? It's not a great, actually the doctor's appointment doesn't have a date, so it won't show on there. But if I say the doctor's appointment is on Friday, okay, it doesn't show up because it's not of type task. If I remove that filter, you'll see it's there, right? It's worthwhile pointing out right now the kind of edit undo that you can do in here. So you can do Command Z or Control Z to undo and Command Shift Z to redo. You can do that as long as you're on the same page. As soon as you navigate out, your undo history is lost. But while you're on this page, you can undo and redo to your heart's content, and that applies to every page. So that's something quite useful, right? So I don't want this doctor's appointment to show. I want that filter to come back, right? Because there's no filter there. So I'll just undo deleting the filter. And if I go back here, you can see the filter is back. Okay. We've got 4 minutes until I'm going to stop. So I don't think I have time. I think if we do another session, I'll go into relations and we'll go through kind of linking data, which is a kind of a big topic in itself. But I think we've covered quite a bit, right? And in terms of the core concept that I want to get across, it's this ability to, you have this very dry view of data, but what I kind of want to get across is that Notion is a way of managing data, right? It's a structured way of managing data and linking it together and then visualizing it in different ways and being quite dynamic about how you can drag it around, what you can do with it, right? So I only want to do this like a number of times a week, otherwise it's going to become problematic. I can do that, I can drag it around, and as I do so, it updates everywhere, right? That's the real power of Notion. You do something somewhere and it updates everywhere. And when you start to build links between your data, that's when it becomes really powerful. So I'll just kind of quickly sum up the data model that I've got. And then if we do this again, I can show you how to implement that. I have a global database. All of my time-based data is in here. All of my kind of research is in here. So if I go on a website, if I've got an article to read, even if I've got a YouTube video to watch sometimes, instead of putting it in my watch later list on YouTube, I'll just use this Notion Web Clipper plugin, which is something we can come to later as well. And that saves it into my global database. And then I have something that I can then turn into a task to do at a certain time, right? Or I can just leave it there, or I can ignore it and it doesn't bother me until one day I want to find it and I think, oh, what was that YouTube video I came across? I can click quick find, I can search for it, I can find it, I can schedule it, and I can know when it's done, right? And then when I then have a view like this, I get a very good idea of what my goals are, what my targets are, and whether I've achieved them or not. So I have that global database, and that's where the bulk of things go. I then want some way to organize it, right? So if I've got lessons, for example, and they're part of a certain course, I have a separate table for courses, okay? I have a separate table for teachers. And I have a few different separate tables, and I have them linked into this one, which again, we can go over how to implement a different time. But that allows me to then arrange these data in collections, right? So I can arrange all of the notes that belong to a certain course, right? Or all of the books that belong to a certain book club. And I can link those to the meetings for the book club. And therefore I can build a relationship between the book club and all of the notes I've taken for a certain book, right? So it becomes quite powerful when you begin kind of linking these databases together. But again, you don't want to go overboard, right? You don't want to create a database for every single thing you do. Rather, you want to try and consolidate databases. What I'd say is you want to consolidate data that has the same kinds of properties into one database, or even if you can augment, some additional properties that aren't relevant for everything in a database, but they're relevant for some of the things. If you keep all of that data together, it allows you to deal with it much more powerfully. And when the data is really, truly of a different nature, then it's much more useful to kind of separate it out and link it back. So when I started out with Notion, I had a number of databases, right? I have maybe like 3 main ones right now and 5 or 6 in total. But when I started out with Notion, for example, I had tasks and events separate, right? And I very quickly came to realize that consolidating those things, even though it might not make such sense at a conceptual point of view as a human, in terms of the way that Notion works and the way that Notion wants you to work, it makes much more sense, right? And you can then organize things in a way that makes sense to you as well. Don't get it unless it's an Indian accent. Okay, we're just past past, so I'm going to stop here for now. And if it's been useful, we can schedule another session and go a bit further. But for now, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to kind of answer them, as long as they're not too involved. Forgot my birthday. Yes, I'm going to have to scroll up the chat window to find out your birthday. It was November. I'll show you one more feature actually. It was, and what was it? It was November 19th, I think, right? Like, I don't want to get this wrong. If you could repeat it, that would be useful. I don't want to offend anyone by getting there. Go back to the kitchen. Okay. Yeah, when random people come across this video on YouTube and they see me say, like, go back to the kitchen, they're going to wonder what's going on. To those people, I would say just look at the chat. Wonder if you don't repeat your birthday, I am going to choose someone else's birthday. Whoever puts their birthday first in the chat, I will add a birthday, and I'll add a reminder for their birthday. November 19th. Okay. So I'm going to go back here to the calendar. Say November 19th. What's your name? Hardy 288. Birthday. How come we didn't get the link? The link to this video. Okay, so this is an event, obviously, so it's not going to show on the calendar here. But what I can do is I can click this button here and I can say remind. Okay, so I want to be reminded a week before your birthday. You can see it's now got this little alarm signal. And what that means is there'll be a notification that turns up inside Notion a week before that. If you've got the Notion app installed on your phone, you'll get a push notification. So that's something quite useful as well. You can be reminded. A whole live stream without a shout out. Okay, it's your lucky day, Motmina. There's your shout out. Let's just create. Okay, seeing as Munder kept saying it, doctor's appointment with Motmina. There we go. Oh, okay. I did post it on Twitter, but maybe it didn't come through or something. Apologies about that. Okay. Any questions, or should we end here? If anything was unclear, let me know, and I can kind of go through it again. Why does Notion rhyme with potion? I don't know. Etymology is not within scope of this tutorial, although I wish it was. Maybe I'll research that for next time. I could say something like Notion is magical, right? But that would be kind of lame. But it genuinely is something that I found. I was talking to Yassine earlier about this, and we were talking about how we're just kind of wing it people. To-do lists don't really work. Planning things doesn't really work, and that's something that I definitely found until I managed to. Maybe it's just because I'm a nerd, right? And being able to deal with data in this way really works for me. But I genuinely think it is something magical, right? When you can do this, or you can do something like this, and it all updates in real time, right? Whether these are on the same page or not, whether they're somewhere else in your workspace, you can change the data in a view that makes sense for that single piece of data, and you can have that change reflected throughout the entirety of your Notion workspace. It's something that I found really powerful. Yeah, okay. What's the last question? And then we will end. What was the retracted message as well? Was that the last question? Was it not suitable for a global audience? No more questions. He'll DM me. Okay. I look forward to the DMs. Apologies that this has been quite kind of unstructured and quite haphazard, and I have no idea what the audio quality is like. I did try and get it the best I could, but I'm aware it's still not great. But hopefully this has given you an overview of Notion and how useful it is. It's better private. Okay. The video or the... I'll ask this question privately as well. Oh, okay. The infamous question. I can guess what the infamous question is. Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. All right. Thank you for... Yeah. Okay. Thanks everyone for attending. And yeah, just let me know on Twitter or wherever if you have any more questions. And let me know if it would be useful to kind of build on this and go a bit further, because there is, you know, we're not quite at the level of the screenshots I shared, and we're not, you know, we're not that close to, you know, the true power of Notion, but hopefully it's given you an insight into what you can do with it. Okay, thanks everyone. I'm gonna close or stop the stream right now.